Daft Punk got their start in 1997 with their debut album, Homework. An album featuring pumping bass, tight drums, and floaty synths, staples of the house genre. Their sophomore follow-up, Discovery, was a much more digital and cybernetic venture, with chopped up samples, vocoded vocals, and grimier synth arpeggios. And their 2006 effort, Human After All, saw the band fuse their robotic sampling techniques with more live instrumentation. But their final album would be a total reworking of the Daft Punk formula. I'm up all night to get some. She's up all night for good fun. I'm up all night to get lucky. Random Access Memories saw the duo collaborating with some of the most talented artists across a plethora of genres. It became the perfect fusion of their robotic personas and their human creativity. An album that is unquestionably Daft Punk and serves as their final love letter to music. Random Access Memories features a handful of artists Daft Punk have drawn plenty of inspiration from. The world of disco gave them Nile Rodgers, house gave them Giorgio Moroder and Todd Edwards, hip-hop and R&B gave them Pharrell Williams, 70s soft rock brought them to Paul Williams, alternative rock gave them Julian Casablancas, and experimental pop introduced them to Panda Bear. Through each of these decade-defining collaborators, Daft Punk made a truly timeless album packed with top-notch artistry. The Gold Robot, Guy Manuel de Homem Christo, commented that it's not that we can't make crazy futuristic sounding stuff, but we wanted to play with the past. By fusing their brand of French house with disco, funk, and soft rock from the 70s and 80s, Random Access Memories becomes exactly what the name says it is. A series of random musical memories patched together to form a cohesive hour and 14 minutes. On their previous 3 releases, Daft Punk relied heavily on sampling. You only have to listen to Digital Love from Discovery to get a taste of their sampling style. Based off of a snippet of 1979's I Love You More, Daft Punk was able to recycle a moment in a forgotten disco track and give it new life. According to the Silver Robot, Thomas Bangalter, for Random Access Memories, we wanted to do what we used to do with machines and samplers, but with people. In order to do this, Homem Christo and Bangalter gathered together a large group of incredibly talented musicians and gave them musical sketches to play around with. For example, instead of using electronic drums or drum samples like they had in the past, live drums were recorded from an acoustic kit, played by legendary session drummer Omar Hakim. Rather than playing an entire song skeleton for the track to be built around, Hakim played extended drum patterns, giving Daft Punk an original library of drum samples to draw from. Another great example of this human sampling technique can be understood through the duo's collaboration with another much respected musician, Chili Gonzalez. When asked about his contribution to the album, Gonzalez recalled that he was left in the dark about what the final product would sound like. He stated in an interview that I played for hours, and they're gonna grab what they grab and turn it into whatever. His parts were recorded in one day, and instead of Daft Punk giving him sheet music, they coached him at the piano, similar to how a director coaches their actors. Eventually, Gonzalez's parts would become the first and fourth tracks on the album. Disco has always inspired the duo. For this reason, 2 prominent forefathers of disco were contacted to be featured on the album, Giorgio Moroder and Nile Rodgers. By getting these 2 legends to perform on the album, their musical DNA is imbued onto the record. Nile Rodgers had wanted to collaborate with Daft Punk since Homework. After a 2010 jam session between Rodgers and the Robots, his collaboration on their next project would be cemented. You'll hear Rodgers' signature chucking style guitar rhythms on Give Life Back to Music, Lose Yourself to Dance, and Get Lucky. Rhythms, chords, and tones straight out of his work with Chic. Alongside Rodgers sat Giorgio Moroder. Moroder rose to prominence in the 70s as a producer, DJ, and songwriter. Outside of his own projects, he wrote hits such as Donna Summer's Hot Stuff. His contributions to the disco genre directly influenced the genres of house and EDM. For Random Access Memories, Giorgio was brought into a studio, sat in front of microphones, and was told to tell his life story.
At that time in Germany, in 69, 70, they had already discotheques.
He spoke for 3 hours, and that was it. He didn't contribute musically, and Daft Punk refused to tell him what their plans even were. Daft Punk would eventually weave parts of his story in between a sprawling arrangement consisting of Omar Hakim's drums, analog synths, and a 70-person orchestra. Throughout the production of this record, Daft Punk asked themselves why samples from the 70s and 80s sounded so magical. It occurred to them that it's a collection of so many different parameters. Of amazing performances, the studio, the place it was recorded, the performers, the craft, the hardware, recording engineers, mixing engineers. Essentially, everything mattered. By attempting to recreate those parameters, Daft Punk was able to create a vast library of original samples that sounded straight out of the 70s and 80s. Samples they could piece together into songs, doing what they used to do with machines and samplers, but with people. Now let's take a closer look at some of the album's best moments and see how Daft Punk uses the concept of memories to craft their love letter to music. The album opens with a bombastic wall of sound, before settling into a disco groove powered by Nile Rodgers' Chucky guitar. This simple yet irresistible drum part soon infects you, making it impossible not to groove along. Soon Daft Punk's iconic vocoded vocals come in, laying out the album's mantra. This repeated line has a serious implication, that music is dead. In Daft Punk's opinion, some of the magic of music has been lost. According to the Robots, their memory of making music was working collaboratively with people to make something much bigger than any one person could make on their own. In 2010, while they were working on the soundtrack to Tron Legacy, Daft Punk met the Strokes frontman Julian Casablancas through a mutual friend. Upon meeting him, the duo presented him with a demo of their song for their next album and asked if he'd like to perform vocals on it. This partnership would eventually give us Instant Crush. Julian Casablancas was given an outline of the story Daft Punk wanted to tell, some overarching concepts, as well as lyrical snippets. Casablancas felt that his first draft was falling flat, so while recording, he would improvise lines that he felt fit the concept behind the album much better. With themes of regret and lost love, Instant Crush is about yet another memory. The memory of a romantic relationship that, after some time, lost its magic. Touch sits at the halfway point of the track listing. According to Omem Christo, it's the emotional and sonic core of the record. In their words, it's the point where you're furthest from either shore. It also happens to be the most complex piece on the album, consisting of over 250 elements. Co-written and sung by 1970s songwriting mogul Paul Williams, the 8-minute epic floats between being a love song, psychedelic electronica, orchestral disco, and the cheesy balladry Paul Williams is known for. Daft Punk and Paul Williams decided to write the track about a robot becoming human. Along with this guiding concept, Daft Punk and Paul Williams drew inspiration from a book about life after death experiences, about people who were declared dead but then came back. Paul Williams apparently had one of these experiences, so the book really spoke to him. After an initial jam session, Paul Williams took that book home and used it to help finish the rest of the lyrics.
Touch, I remember touch, pictures came.
No discussion of Random Access Memories would be complete without mentioning Get Lucky. In its first demo form, the song centered around a Wurlitzer and didn't feature Nile Rodgers' iconic guitar at all. When Rodgers entered the studio to record his part, he'd asked that everything but the drums be muted to allow him to better focus on gluing his playing to the drums. A staple of the disco genre that Rodgers was trying to help Daft Punk and the world remember. With the focus now on Rodgers' guitar and the addition of Pharrell Williams' catchy vocals, Get Lucky became a track that weaponized nostalgia. in turn becoming an international sensation.
Like the legend of the Phoenix.
Todd Edwards collaborated with Daft Punk on Discovery's Face to Face.
It's amazing what you'll find face to face.
He would bring yet another shining gem to Random Access Memories, with Fragments of Time. Fragments of Time would be Edwards' love letter to Daft Punk and the Random Access Memories sessions.
Familiar faces I've never seen, living the gold and the silver dream.
Referencing the famous gold and silver helmets the duo wear, the lyrics also reference the production approach that Daft Punk used for this album, building good vibes in the studio, letting musicians experiment and improvise, and just making music and memories together.
Keep building these random memories, turning our days into melodies.
Most importantly, Fragments of Time seems to make reference to the album's title and guiding concepts that Daft Punk kept in mind while producing the album.
I'll just keep playing back these fragments of time.
Memory was a guiding concept to the Robots when crafting their compositions for Ram. Many of the songs reference memories in one way or another, imbuing the album with a sense of nostalgia. Each featured artist brings their own musical history to the table, and when combined with the disco and electronic stylings of Daft Punk, you get an album that relies heavily on the concept of human memory. The album became Daft Punk's most critically successful, winning 3 Grammys including Album of the Year. It was a commercial success as well, debuting at the #1 spot in 20 countries. It would be the group's final studio album together, after only going on to collaborate on a handful of songs with The Weeknd and Parcels before their split in 2021. When creating Random Access Memories, Daft Punk didn't want to rely on samples like they had in the past. Instead, they asked themselves where the magic of samples came from, seeking to recreate that sort of magic in their studio sessions. They would bring in session musicians and featured artists to draw from their unique musical memories and aid Daft Punk in creating their final album, and what would be a beautiful love letter to music. Thanks for watching, ladies and gents. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like rating. If you loved it, subscribe, share it with a music nerd. Tell me what your favorite song from Random Access Memories was, and what your favorite Daft Punk album was. And that's it for me. Again, thanks for watching, and keep listening.